In this video, we will talk about inheritance. So what is inheritance? Well, inheritance is the mechanism in object-oriented programming to extend the life of a class by deriving a new class based on an older class or an existing class. So we can take a starting class that has already been created and we can create a new class based off of the old class and inherit all of the behaviors and attributes of the existing class. And when I use the term base class, I'm referring to the starting class, the class that is first created and we want to grab the attributes and behaviors from. The derived class is the new class. It is the class that is doing the inheriting. In C#, you can only inherit from one class. So a derived class can only inherit from one base class. Inheritance follows an is-a type relationship. What that means is, for example, if you have some base class like a shape, you can define a circle class which is a shape. A circle is a shape. When you have two entities that have an is-a relationship, you can use inheritance to create the latter. Another example would be a triangle is a shape. A square is a shape. But I wouldn't create a cat class and inherit from the shape class because a cat is not a shape. So inheritance works best when you have an is-a relationship. Now inheritance only goes in one direction. If I have attributes and behaviors defined in my shape class, I can pass them down to a derived class, but if I add any attributes and behaviors to my derived class, they are not passed backwards. So for example, all circles are shapes, but not all shapes are circles. So inheritance kind of only works in one direction. Alright, let's do a quick example on this. So what I have here is I have a class named myBaseClass, and it is empty right now. And I'm going to go ahead and throw a property. Let's create a property and a method. Remember, properties define attributes of a class. Methods define behaviors of a class. So in my base class, let's just give it a generic property. I'm going to give it a color property, and we'll make it an auto-implemented property here. And then as a method, we'll do something like, I guess we'll print something out, a generic print. I'm going to make an about method. So I'm going to say public void about, and we'll print out something, console.writeLine, I am the base class. So we have an attribute and a behavior here. So I can go in my program, once I create my class, I can go in my program, and I can create an instance of this class. Right here, we'll instantiate my base class object. And if I look at the data components, the data members of my class, I see that I have an about method and a color property. Okay, because that's what I just defined here. Now let's create a new class that inherits the color property and the about method from our base class. So I'm going to go to my project, add a class. I'm going to name this class my derived class. And then I'm going to use the inheritance syntax. In C#, inheritance syntax is just a colon followed by the class you want to inherit from, my base class. So our syntax here, if I put a comment, this is the derived class. Well, it's already spelled. Derived class is inheriting the attributes and behaviors from the base class. Okay, so without adding anything new to my derived class, I can go to my program and create a derived class object. New derived class. And if I say dc dot, inside my derived class, notice I have the about method and a color property. So I've inherited all of the attributes and behaviors of my base class just by using this inheritance syntax. Now in my derived class, let's add a new property. So I'm going to say public, we'll make it a string, and I'll just call it a new property. Get set. So I've defined a new property in my derived class. I want to show you that properties do not inherit both ways. So in my program, if I look at my base class object, I see the about property, the about method and the color property. But I do not see any derived property, any new property. But if I look at my derived class, I have my inherited data members and I can see my new property. So what we've done in our derived class is we've extended the base class. We've inherited the existing attributes and behaviors and extended it. Now, just out of curiosity, or in case you ever wondered, when I look at my base class here, I see the about method and the color property, but I also have these four methods that exist: an equals, get hashcode, get type, and toString. But I didn't create those, right? I just have my color and about method. So where did these other four methods come from? Well, they actually come from inheritance. So in C#, there exists a data type called the object data type. And the object data type is the ultimate base class in the C# language. Everything inherits from the object class. And if I look at my object variable here, it has four methods defined: an equals method, a get hashcode, a get type, and toString. Because everything in C# inherits from the object class, everything that we use has an equals, get hashcode, get type, and toString method. Our base class does. Here they are. Our derived class does. Equals, get hashcode, get type, toString. If I look at anything like an integer, int x, my integer has equals, get hashcode, get type, toString. Everything in C# inherits from the object class. All right, hope this helps.